Again, thank you everybody for taking the time to join us here, and look forward to meeting with those who took the ride up shortly at 12:30 this morning. The CIAC Board of Control met to finalize the winter plans, as was the case when the CIAC Board of Control took action in November, set January 19th as the start date for winter sports. The Board of Control today maintain that as a start date, with the caveat that we have stated that practices can start no sooner than January 19th. We have also stated that games can start no sooner than February 8th. These decisions came about through a consultation with a number of people. We first, again, would like to thank the Department of Health, Commissioner Gifford, the governor's office, as well as Paul Mounds through the governor's office for their continued work and collaboration with us. And we again want to extend a big thank you to the CSMS Sports Medicine Committee, Dr. Arliss Mayer is the chair, and all those who have worked with us over the past couple months, as well as quite a bit over the past week to put a final plan together. As our schools are returning from the new year, and those that were on distance learning start to make decisions of when they will return to either hybrid or full in-person instruction, we recognize that the variability around the state will probably be a bit more than normal for the next couple of weeks. We understand that some districts are ready to proceed and begin with their sports on January 19th. We also understand that some other districts may be seeking some more flexibility and time, and not looking at February 1st or even a little bit later as a start date. So the plan that we put forth today addresses all of those needs and concerns. We recognize that the social, emotional, mental, and physical well-being of our kids is essential, and it's an essential part of our work. For education-based athletics, we are an extension of the school curriculum, and we seek to meet those needs of our kids, not only from that academic level, but also from a physical, cognitive, social, and emotional level through their clubs and activities, and sports is an important aspect of their lives. With that, we, again, as stated, we give that flexibility for the schools to start. Also, in providing flexibility, the decision was made today to cancel CIAC Winter Championships. The reasoning and rationale in making that decision to cancel the championships, we are going to allow the leagues to have full league tournaments and championships at the end of March. We remain with the guidance that we would play 12 regular season games and then allow additional games in the last couple of weeks as the league see fit. Again, with different schools coming back at different times and different teams being ready to start at different times, it's going to have a bit of a limiting factor for scheduling within those leagues at the start of the season. We also have to continue to anticipate that there's going to be teams that will be required to quarantine. We are still playing in a COVID pandemic, so we have to anticipate as well that there will be disruptions to the schedule through the winter season. If we were to maintain a CIAC Winter Championship, then there's a hard stop date to regular season games that, again, would be a limiting factor at the end of the season. By allowing the leagues to have control and adjust and have the flexibility to give the best experience that they can to the kids within the leagues with CIAC support, we do feel that we're going to be able to maximize playing opportunities and experiences for kids, which we see as a priority right now. We don't want state tournaments to be a limiting factor in kids being able to play games. We want them to maximize their opportunities to play. Additionally, the high-risk sports in the winter are cheerleading, competitive cheer, competitive dance, and wrestling. Per DPH's recommendation that high-risk sports be limited to small group conditioning and non-contact skill building through the winter season. So our winter season will conclude March 28th. So high-risk sports will not be able to hold competitions or anything beyond those small group conditioning and non-contact skill building activities through March 28th. With indoor track, while it's a moderate risk sport, the number of people that gather for track is also a limitation. And so we agree with the recommendation that having large track meets or multi-team track meets where you have large groups of people coming together is not conducive. So with indoor track, we are going to allow practices and skill instruction to begin on January 19th or when schools are ready. And then we will re-examine the possibility of having dual meets or smaller group team meets within leagues during the month of March if the weather provides for some outdoor competition, some outdoor meets, or if we feel we can do some smaller group things within the indoor facilities at that time. But from January 19th through the month of February, the indoor track will be limited to the practices and skill developments. Okay. The other piece that we'll address, obviously, with the alternative season was supposed to go with some conditioning starting February 22nd, a start date of March 8th, and an end date of April, I think 16th or 17th in there. So again, with the caveat of no high-risk sports through the end of the winter season, that means no high-risk sports through the end of March. And the alternative season really was a place that we were seeing those high-risk sports may be shifted to. However, because across the state, we did not have the ability to play any sports across the state right now to January 19th. As you know, all youth sports are on pause right now, as well as CIAC, with no sports being played to January 19th. That significantly reduces the time frame in which we can hold that alternative season. The limitation of no high-risk sports until the end of the winter season, again, places further limitation to that, where there is only a very short, would have been really a 2-week period left of that alternative season. So with that, the board did take action today where we canceled the alternative season. There will not be an alternative season this year. The spring sports, therefore, will begin on March 29th. So our winter season will end on March 28th, and our spring sports season will begin on March 29th. We certainly understand and empathize that those athletes that would have been able to have some competition in that alternative season, will not be able to have that competition. But again, throughout this experience, we have tried the best we can to provide any opportunities that we could make available to our kids. If we couldn't provide those high risks, we were able to successfully engage kids and low to moderate risk activities. We will continue to do that through the winter season. Additionally, the priority of the board has been to maintain a spring season as much as we can without interruption because of those kids losing that entire experience last year. When considering whether or not anything could move to the spring season, there were multiple factors that the board took into consideration. One was the number of athletes that would have conflicts if we made that adjustment. In two of the sports, in football, 38% of our football players also play a spring sport. In the sport of wrestling, 31% of our wrestlers also play a spring sport, which would again create quite a bit of a conflict there. In addition, 27% of our spring athletes play football and/or wrestling. So you would have multiple conflicts with athletes would be a limiting factor, particularly for smaller schools to try to enter or play anything in that season. Additionally, we have received updated recommendations and guidance from the NFHS on spring football. And there were limiting factors in that if we decided to play spring football, as well. One of the main limiting factors through that was a recommendation that if you play a spring football season, that you reduce the number of games that you play the following fall because of the exposure of concussion and contacts within the same calendar year. And, considering the impact that playing any season, any games this year would negatively impact the following year when we anticipate being able to have a full fall season next year was also a significant consideration for the board today. I think that brings you up to date on, all of the sports where we are right now, as well as the alternative, the spring season, and the high-risk sports. So with that, I will answer any questions that you have. John, how would you like to handle? Oh, I do see one question in here. I'll get right away. Joe Morelli had asked the addition of the waiver form in the document was done because. So, Joe, in DPH's guidance to us, they recommend that that parents and players be informed of the risks and concerns of playing sports in a pandemic. Again, I think what can't be lost is we are playing sports in a pandemic. Playing sports in a pandemic is not easy. We do the best we can to provide safe experiences for kids, understanding that there are limitations to that. We also want our parents and our student athletes to be fully informed of what those risks are. So with DPH's recommendation, that consent form was drafted as a template for our school districts to be able to use as a resource as appropriate within their schools. And John, I will turn it back to you for how you'd like to handle questions.
We'll just do this in an orderly fashion. Frankie Graziano from WNPR. You can go first.
Hey, Glenn, how are you? I know we talked about this for my upcoming special that's coming up, and I want to understand. I want to let you know that I understand about what student athletes are going through. But as I've seen on Twitter and other areas in the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of people that might not have a student athlete in the family, so they don't care right now because of how things are in the pandemic. So what do you tell people in Connecticut right now who are afraid of community spread? What do you say to them about having athletics amid a pandemic, especially since 2 days ago, I think it was, we had that 10.7% positivity rate?
Yeah, Frankie, we've learned a lot as we've continued through this. And, one of the things we've been able to do that's very different now that we didn't have in the fall is the ability to collect data and the ability to look at what that impact is. I think largely it has been shown within Connecticut as well as around the country that schools are not necessarily a source of spread, right? We're not seeing transmission in schools. Likewise, while we are seeing transmission through intra-sport spread within a team, that spread is largely due to the activities that happen around the sport. CIAC, what we've been able to demonstrate is because of our ability, not only with compliance, but the structure of education-based athletics, where we don't have multiple people carpooling to events, where we don't have team parties, where, we could really, address those needs and those concerns, that the impact or the risk of transmission through education-based interscholastic athletics is relatively low. We're able to offer kids what they deserve and need in terms of that social, emotional, physical, cognitive, activity and exercise in a fairly safe manner. In addition to what we've been able to collect with data with us, I think that's been supported when you look at the extensive testing that has been done in other forms of athletics, the NCAA, the pro sports. Again, they have some different mitigating things that they can do, but even at those levels, you've seen very little, if any, transmission from team A to team B. So we do believe that we have a safe environment. And the other thing I would share is, as we've demonstrated in the past, if the COVID environment creates a scenario that we feel it is unsafe, we will shut it down.
I see questions from Jeff Jacobs and Sean McFarland. If anyone else wants to ask a question, just let me know in the chat. We'll start with Jeff Jacobs, First Media. Jeff?
Yeah. Hi, Glenn. Two questions. One, how much discussion was there about allowing athletes to play sort of multiple sports at one time, say to allow the state basketball to go on while maybe they would start their baseball season also, in case one kid had more of a passion in one sport than another. This sort of allowing the multiple sport aspect of that as sort of a one-time thing here with the pandemic. And the second question I had was, how much discussion was there about the concussion protocols that you said about the one calendar year before you guys even introduced the idea of playing football in the spring? It seemed, I was just curious about how much talk had gone into that even before you introduced that idea.
Yes, Jeff. We've had extensive discussions on both of those. The recommendations that we've had and the policies we've had with our discussions with the State Medical Society Sports Med Committee for years in terms of the appropriateness of playing multiple sports or dual rostering during the season, has always had concern with it for overuse injury with kids. So there's always been a small overlap, of seasons, and we'll still see that where we'll see pitchers and catchers get started, during the end of that winter season. Traditionally, pitchers and catchers get started during the last week of the basketball championships. You usually see a crossover between the football championships and the start of the winter season on a normal year. But outside of those small crossovers, it just creates more concern in terms of overuse injury. So, again, I think we are providing good experiences for the kids. I think we're maximizing those opportunities for kids to play, maintaining that within leagues. They'll have the opportunities to play those rivalry games and really have some strong competition and enjoy those experiences. From the standpoint of discussions about playing in the spring, there were discussions that were taking place. With that, we were looking at what would be an appropriate number of games, what would be an appropriate recovery time. With that, also looking at and had discussions about the ability to recertify equipment from the vendors if you're using it in the spring in game competition versus where previously that hasn't been the case. So those things have been looked at and discussed before. What is new is the National Federation had not weighed in with recommendations. And when you have the National Federation, who is the leading expert on interscholastic and youth sports, and their sport medicine advisory committee, issued to us guidance for the states that were considering spring football. Much has been the case with COVID all along. When you get new information, it's important that you take that information and review its relevance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Sean McFarland from the Hartford Courant.
Hey, Glenn, I know you just touched on it, but in terms of, shutting sports down, if the COVID metrics got too severe, whatever it may be, do you have a threshold for that? Or is that, I know we talk about fluidity a lot. Is that sort of an ever-changing metric? Is there something specific threshold you're looking for that you would say, we have to shut things down?
Sean, it's not a specific threshold. Again, I think it's, it's a combination of things. We'll continue on a regular basis to have conversations with the sports Med Advisory Committee here at CIAC, as well as with DPH and the governor's office as well. When we look at, again, the populations being impacted within those metrics and, what is maybe being predicted in terms of, hopefully a flat trend turning to a downward trend. We're optimistic that providing the flexibility for districts to start when they're comfortable and giving full flexibility to the end of March will accommodate and allow teams to play, hopefully without needing to shut down. I think one of the aspects we have to certainly be aware of as more information becomes available as the new variants of COVID, as more information is learned about that.
Lori, Ned, and Jerry, you're coming up right now. Justin DeVellis, News 12. Go ahead, Justin.
Thanks, John. Glenn, thank you. I think I speak for everyone when I say would love to see, this season happen. But I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Speaking to some superintendents, you watch the NBA, you watch the NCAA, and I know these are high school athletes, younger kids, but for the average fan seeing, the NBA, the NCAA canceling, games left and right, with all their testing protocols, high school is not going to have those kind of testing protocols. How do you expect? Are you confident that you can really get this done?
Absolutely. If we weren't confident we can get it done, Justin, we wouldn't be moving forward with it. Not only are we confident that we can get it done, but the guidance from DPH shows confidence that we can get it done. The support of the CSMS Sports Medicine Committee shows confidence that we can get it done. And the flexibility that we provide allows districts to move forward at a pace that is appropriate for them and meets the needs of their individual districts. So again, we've shown through the fall with the data that we provided. Yes, we had adjustments to schedules. Yes, we've had cancellations to events, but we were very successful in the fall of engaging over 28,000 athletes in a safe manner, and we will be successful in the winter of engaging our kids in the sports that we're able to.
Lori Riley from the Hartford Current. Go ahead.
Hey, Glenn. Just curious, in the fall, it was a very measured approach to coming into the season. There, we went from cohorts of 4 to 6 to 8 or whatever, and kind of moved in. And this, I am assuming it's just going to be full team practice starting January 19th with none of that, a cohort situation. Just curious about that. And also, obviously there's a risk of, people becoming injured or whatever, because, going right back into a season again. Just wonder if you could touch on those two topics.
Sure, Lori. So again, we certainly know more now with data of the risk of transmission through school and the school environment, with interscholastic athletics being an extension of that. So as we were returning to campus for the first time since the pandemic, that was certainly a concern. It remains something that we need to be aware of and we need to be addressed as we return to that. But we certainly have more schools in hybrid models and full in-person learning right now than we did in September. We have other school districts as well that were, that are coming back and moving to more full in-person models. Again, we want to support those districts and allow them to return to athletics in the time frame that they feel it's appropriate. But we have far more data now to support that the risk of transmission from school is very low. In terms of the return from athletics in the in the fall, we did have a 3-week period of reconditioning before you enter into those first games. So again, if you look at the timeframes, games no sooner than January 19th, practices no sooner than January 19th, games no sooner than February 8th, right? So the week of the 19th, the week of the 25th, the week of the 1st as practices and conditioning, that same 3-week time period is there. For anybody that starts after, we have it, built in there that you need at least 15 days of conditioning before your first game and 10 days before your first scrimmage. So we build that 3-week of conditioning time in regardless of when you start. We do allow conditioning to take place either virtually or in person.
We've got about 5 minutes, guys, before we head out, and ladies, before we head outside. But I know that Ned Griffin from the Day has a question, Jerry DeSimus, and we have some follow-ups in the chat. We'll get to those as well. Let's start with Ned. Ned, go ahead.
Afternoon, Glenn. Did you guys get any feedback from districts about how many would be able to start on time or how many may not even be prepared to start due to the pandemic?
Yeah, Ned, we didn't get too much, direct feedback to us. Again, we heard a few schools that expressed that they'd like to, start February 1st. And conversely, we had schools and superintendents who reached out and said they were ready to go on the 19th and hope we stick to it. So I'd say it was pretty even from what we received. I think the potential start date of January 19th has been out there for quite some time. The idea of scheduling 12 regular season games has been out there for quite some time. So I do think most of our districts and our administrators understood the frameworks for this, the idea of wearing masks while playing. That was all stuff that was actually in the November 9th guidance from DPH. So they were all well aware of those elements as well. So I think there was enough time for preparation. That for districts, it really comes down to conversations with their individual district doctors and consultation with their local DPH and when they're comfortable in their own community of returning.
Jerry DeSimas from the Collinsville Press and CT Wrestling Online. Jerry?
Glenn, how you doing? In the fall, the leagues had a tournament experience. It was limited to 2 games. In some of the larger leagues, the teams could not cross over and have a true league championship. Will it be up to the leagues to decide that this time in the winter? Will they have that flexibility, or will it just be a 2-game post-tournament experience like you guys did in the fall?
Jerry, we're making it more flexible in the winter. They will be able to play more than 2 games, and they will be making the decisions within their leagues to play a full conference tournament. It won't be restricted at that time. Again, we anticipate that by the time we get to March, the numbers are much better. But, we'll continue to have conversations about that and guide our leagues as we go forward, but it would be full conference tournaments.
Frankie Graziano had a follow-up in the chat off of Sean McFarland's question. Frankie is still there. You want to just ask that question?
Yeah. So I think community spread, it sounds like, is not the biggest concern because of the fact that, and I don't want to put more words in your mouth, but because of the fact that rates are so high right now. But just help me out with this. Is it more that there could be a potential for a variant and maybe that could change things if there's more student transmission? Is the main thing we should be watching here if numbers go up in schools and somehow student athletes are getting sick? Is that what we should watch out for, Glenn?
Yeah, Frankie, I think, the main metric that we would be looking for is, like you said, where are those infections happening and with what groups? Right now, we have very little data that would show that transmissions are happening, as a result of in-person instruction or interscholastic athletics. We will continue to keep a close eye on that and track the progress of our schools. And if that grows, then we will certainly have discussions about the appropriateness of continuing.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up with questions from Kai Stevens and Sean Patrick Boley. Kai Stevens, Fox 61, go right ahead.
Hey, Glenn. I know you touched on this a little. Obviously, it's up to the schools whether they want to opt in or not. Is there a limitation? Like, if a bunch of people opt out, is there going to be a certain amount that you need to hit of participation to kind of move forward with everyone successfully? I mean, obviously, they're only playing in certain regions. So if some schools opt out, is that going to limit what's possible?
Yeah, Kai, there's no limitation because we took the step to eliminate the state tournament. So because we're keeping all the play within leagues, right, and you have the ability now to be flexible and work with those schools that are ready to return. For our larger leagues, it gives you a lot of flexibility. For our smaller leagues, those decisions are probably going to be, made pretty closely together of what those schools are going to do. So it really allows between January 19th and March 28th, it gives you the ability to provide what you see as the most appropriate experience, and CIAC stands ready to support our member schools and whatever that experience is to make it a good one for our kids.
We'll wrap up the Zoom session with a question from Sean Patrick Boley, Game Time CT. Sean?
Yeah, hi, Glenn. It seems like football got hit with a double whammy here. First of all, you don't know when the DPH, I believe, would allow high risk sports after the winter season. I think that seems to supersede the other guidance. But the other guidance, just you could explain to me a little bit more. What was the reasoning behind the idea that you would limit games if you played an alternative season? And then a little quick follow up to that, would that also include the independent football leagues that have been popping up around the state?
I'm sorry, Sean, can you just clarify for me when you're asking the limited games, are you asking?
Yeah, well, what's the guy who gave that guidance? Where'd you get that from? And what was the reasoning behind it that you know of? Why they have to limit games in the fall if they played in a spring alternative season? And does that also include the independent football games that have been leagues that have been playing in the fall?
Okay, thank you, Sean. Again, the guidance about limiting games in the fall, if you play a season in the spring, came from the National Federation. That was updated guidance that was sent from the National Federation to the states that were considering playing football in the spring. In terms of the independent leagues, again, the CIAC does not have anything to do with the independent leagues. What we would have to be aware of from that is how does the guidance from the National Federation apply to just playing the sport of football in the spring. So if there was, something like that, again, as you said, what we know right now is high risk sports cannot play for CIAC until March 28th. If there's, change to that, and if the state allows high risk sports to go, after that, and, we'll see what the response is at that time. But, in our conversations, and even, in today's conversations, again, we have representation in those meetings from various groups around the state, including coaches, ADs, principals, athletic trainers, the doctors, the thought and the decision of, at this time, based on the guidance from DPH, the fact that no sports in Connecticut were played until January 19th, and the updated guidance from the NFHS, that it was the right decision at this time to make that determination on the alternate season.
Thank you, everyone.